evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Chamber of the Wraith. My name is Brian, and today we're talking about two of the biggest, nastiest, most powerful heavyweights in Injustice Gods Among Us. The undead nightmare Solomon Grundy, and the unkillable Doomsday. These characters have their own tricks that make them broken, and despite the fact that they're not actually top tier, they, more than any other character in this game, epitomize the fact that everybody has something broken about them. From Hawkgirl's ridiculous air mobility, to Flash's insane mix-ups and high damage, and, well, Scorpion's teleports, and Batgirl's ultimate anti-zoning tactics. Every character has at least one thing that is at least a little bit broken about them, and that is what makes it fun. Well, broken might be the wrong word, but you get the idea. We're going to start off with Doomsday, because this guy is my kind of character. Well, I've always been a big fan of big, giant brawlers, and this guy's no exception. And for two giant villains, I'm going... Oh, I forgot to mention too. In the arena options, you can choose to turn on or off interactable objects and transitions to keep things consistent. But because we're showcasing the stages, we're gonna keep them on. We're gonna go to strikers and begin. We're gonna start with Doomsday because Doomsday is scary. The first thing I want to point out is that Doomsday has a unique normal. He has a unique jumping normal called Falling Brimstone. He has your normal jumping light, jumping mid, and jumping heavy. But he also has something in between medium and heavy, which is this big body splash, which can cross up and allow for combos. Or things like this. Just gonna use something basic. If I can do it. As you can see, for an example. Now let's talk combos. Strings-wise, Doomsday doesn't have a whole lot of complicated things. He's very straightforward, and he's very much about smashing things. Also, his forward dash is great. Look at that. Look at the ground it covers when he leaps. You do not want this guy in your face. Hunter ends with an overhead. Quick swipe into mid into overhead. This is not a combo string. This allows for Oki. Reign Supreme is your basic combo string. Because you can... There it is. Go into shoulder tackle afterwards. You can't cancel into it directly, but once you get the opponent in the corner, which is very easy with shoulder tackle, you can get stuff like this. Damage! Prehistoric Kryptonian features an overhead and a mid that knocks the opponent down. The ultimate is tricky because you don't have grab conversions. This game didn't have them yet, so I can't do... Or can I? Yeah, because L1 is to grab, so I can't press the L1 button for a shortcut, but I can still do this for a true throw. Do this input, you get an unblockable that knocks the opponent back pretty far. Infinite power. Very similar to Reign Supreme, but I can actually special cancel it at any time, so I can do something like this to keep the opponent in the corner. Countless Deaths starts off of a very slow mid into overhead conversion. Also, I love that Gorilla Grodd is now T-posing in the background. This is what happens in practice mode every once in a while. Let's fix that. Because we're now going to talk about one last string, the Destroyer. Standing 3 is a launcher in and of itself, so can actually cancel it into his air grab, for instance. Not a lot of damage, but that's just an example of things you can do. Especially when you throw this out during a corner combo. Speaking of air combos, air snatch is what you would expect. It's an air grab. Catch the opponent and then throw them back. Amplify it, however, and you break their back even harder for more damage. Venom, which is an odd name for an attack, is an advancing shoulder tackle. Not full screen, but it covers a lot of distance, and I think it's actually twice as much as a normal dash. Little less than double. But if you amplify, you get the full screen aspect. And you can even mix up when you amplify it so that you can catch blocking opponents off guard. Upward Venom is similar, but it's a rising shoulder tackle that... Can you get a combo? I don't think you can in the corner. Yeah, you're not getting a corner in the combo with this. Hey, combo in the corner. That's the word I meant to say. But now we're onto the bro stuff. The reason why Solomon Grundy is broken is he has the fastest overhead low I've ever seen in a fighting game. It's virtually instant. And yes, it is Earthshake. Theoretically speaking, you could block this if you're on point. But that would require you to be on point with your blocks, ready for any random overhead, mid, or just this move coming out as an ender. I wonder if this throw is duckable or not. Usually something like that is. No, it isn't. It's a true... You're not avoiding that throw. So you can catch them that way. But back to Earthshake. The things you can catch with this. There, overhead. Overhead low. Overhead mid. Overhead. Overhead low. Launcher. Yeah, if you amplify Earthshake, this thing becomes a launcher. So, wait, did we cover Alpha Omega? I don't think we did, actually. My bad. Advancing overhead with a kick that can be special canceled in certain attacks. So you're not getting a traditional Earthshake off this, but you're getting the normal one, but you're not getting a meter burn. But that doesn't matter when. Let's see. You can get stuff like that going. Knock the opponent back. It's ridiculous the kind of things the possibilities with Earthshake. Guess wrong and you're getting launched. Guess wrong, you're eating 12%. It's insanity. And then there's Supernova. It's unblockable. Starts off of a mid. This is a Shokan-esque attack. You know, Kentaro, Goro, and Shiva all have their stomps. The only thing is on its own, Doomsday doesn't really go that far. However, on Amplify, which can happen at any time, this move will track and do a little more damage. So, counter zoning in one move like this. Be mindful. Now it's time for his trait, which is called Doom to All. For a short period of time, Doomsday gains super armor. Try to stop Doomsday while this is active, and it's not happening. In fact, if I were Grundy, as an example, I'm gonna armor up, dash twice, and then grab him. Ready? Here. Gonna wait for him to armor out because I had to explain what I was doing. Okay, so it didn't quite work. Maybe if I catch him on the first dash. See? And he can punish me with a throw or anything. So that kind of armor is really strong, but it's directly countered by lots of little hits because it forces him into a kind of block stun state. And if your name is, I don't know, Superman, or if you have a super move ready, well, you're punching right through that armor. And the cooldown for Doom to All can be quite a while once it's active. Also, I love that his uppercut is just a chest bump. Very odd uppercut thing. Look at how long it takes, though, for Doom to All actually recovering. It still hasn't recovered yet, and I'm still bouncing around and waiting. That was a really long time. This trait takes a ridiculously long time to load. So be mindful of that if you're going to use Doomsday. Doomsday's super move is a fairly fast mid that can anti-air. Doesn't do a lot of damage in and of itself. But... oh, I know this can anti-air. There it is. This'll anti-air. Yoink! Bam. Off we go. This just epitomizes Doomsday's brutality. Owie. Just... owie. Now it's time for Solomon Grundy. And this guy is a premier grappling type character. No unique normal, so we'll just proceed onwards. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. Okay. Driven to kill. This is a standing string, which can combo into certain attacks. Nothing too remarkable about Driven to Kill. It's just a basic string. Destroy on its own launches really well in the corner. There we go. Yeah, there we go. So we do that again in the corner. By the way, Grundy doesn't have the greatest movement on his own when it comes to dashing, so bear that in mind. Oh wait. On a switch. Face of Evil is a quick shunt to knock the opponent back, which is not something Grundy usually wants, but a quick mid is always a good thing to have, especially if you got the opponent in the corner. Bully them in the corner, keep your Oki, keep going. Born on a Monday comes off of an overhead. A big, walloping overhead, which can overhead into this special move, which we'll get into later. And it has its own overhead where it's low overhead, or into trait, which is a one-button command grab that is actually quite scary when we actually get into it. No pain, starts off of a low, and advances. This is big corner carry. A couple of these, and the opponent is already staring Solomon Grundy down in the corner. Not a good prospect for any character to watch out for, because of all of the command grabs the big guy has. Death to All will launch, and it comes off of a low too. So you could do overhead, you can do stuff like overhead and low in order to get the staggers going, or you could do low launch in order to get a similar effect. Next is Already Dead, which comes off of a low at close range and knocks the opponent back. This is special cancelable and can special cancel into this corpse walk attack, which is very useful indeed because it is armored, but we're not there yet. Slaughter Swamp is a very slow but very good anti-air mid. The kind of attack that you would use to kind of augment attacks on the ground. So, as an example, Bad Blood will launch off of this mid. And Dead's Blood just does more damage and will knock the opponent back. Not usually a good prospect, but since Grundy has a pseudo projectile, it's not the worst thing. Tombstoned is a double mid from crouching, and Grundy's unique in having 2 crouching strings. One of them launches, sort of, because it's swampland. It's very hard to land the swampland's second hit on its own, but if Grundy whiffs an uppercut, let's say, he can get quite a bit of damage. And remember, it's an overhead, so he'll clobber you if you're not careful. That leaves about it. Now let's talk special moves. Cleaver Spin. Quick overhead where Grundy pulls one of the weapons up his back to swipe the opponent. On Amplify, you trade a little bit of damage for a launcher. Which can lead to some scary situations if you're willing to spend 2 bar. Walking Corpse. As I mentioned, this is an armored advancing attack, and is a true grab. With ridiculous Oki. Like, you want to see the kind of Okis that you can get off of this? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 dashes and beginning a 5th by the time Doomsday is able to wake up. This is insanity. Then there's Grave Rot, which applies a damage over time, which doesn't seem to scale on its own. Which means more damage for you, especially when you have the prospect of Walking Corpse, taking a little more damage, dashing in. Also, is it just me, or does the opponent actually take more damage? They do! On top of the damage over time. On top of the damage over time, which does actually scale, Grundy gets a 50% damage boost. At least when he's close to the opponent. So, this Pseudo Projectile is a great example of that. This isn't going to be doing that. Hang on. I guess it's just off of anything that Grundy does to actually touch you, but still. More damage, because Grundy needs more damage, especially when we get to some of the scary crap he can do. On Amplify, the damage over time increases by 2.5, and he still gets a 50% damage buff. So, imagine, if you will, this basic combo. 36% for 2 bar, technically. But, without it... Grundy gets 31%. Oh, wait, can he double up? Oh... That's bad. Grundy can double up. Not on the buff per se. But he can only pick one of each. Look at that. That was just a normal throw, and it did double damage. Because of the combination of oh man. The Grave Rot is not to be underestimated. Especially when you combine it with Dead Air, which either launches the opponent really far, or you get something like this. For basic combos. And if we combine it with Grave Rot, look at that. Look at that damage that he's getting easily. Swamp Hands, I've been doing for a little bit, is a very slow, low attack that staggers opponents. But on Amplified, restrains opponents for a little bit. For combo potential. To the Grave is his air grab. It's fast, it catches opponents trying to be in the air for any reason, but cannot be amplified on its own. So with all of these grabs, you might have wondered about his trait, which I did say is a command grab in and of itself. It's called the Pain Chain. On its own, it's a pretty unimpressive command grab ender. But then you start to look at what it can do for Grundy. The Power Chain, which if you're just starting off, you'll just get this. You'll notice now he has a fist and a buff in his trait icon. What does that mean exactly? Well, I need to find something that is 5. There we go. So, 5% damage, right? Level 1 Power Chain. Increases the damage by 10%. Which, if you know anything about Grundy by now, means insane damage. That was actually 1 bar. Now the thing is that you'll think that the controls are switching on you, but that's just because of the position of the opponent. If you just do the input normally when he grabs the opponent, he'll do it. And then with Power Final Hit, this is what you have to do to get this part. Do the input again when Grundy begins to lift the opponent up. And now he's got 2, which means, oh boy, 20% more damage. So, like I said, that was 60% almost effortlessly. Granted, I had to spend a whole lot of meter and I'm at level 2, but still. 58%. My throws are doing insane damage on their own. And again, remember the 20% damage buff. How would you like your throws to do 26% damage on their own? Grundy can let you do that, and then some. Now, you might be looking at this and thinking, oh, well, okay, the execution's a little bit rough, but pretty easy to do. When does it end? It doesn't end. These buffs do not end. Unlike pretty much every other buff in NetherRealm history, cinematic events do not make them go away, and they last they can last an entire fight. Before we spoil too much, let's actually go back to the yard. Yeah, Grundy's buffs are permanent, and that's what makes it scary. How would you like to face down against a grappler that can buff his damage by 50%, do damage over time, and permanently buff himself by a further 20%? Pain Chain lets him. And yes, this can loop. While its maximum is ×2, you can still get really big damage. Again. Look at that. Oh, it's only off the face. Okay. Why is it looking like that? That's weird. Is it not? Because I do this. Hey. That's very weird. I thought it buffed damage as well. It appears that I'm mistaken. Yeah, I was mistaken earlier. I thought it buffed damage. It actually doesn't. That's my bad. But still, the amount of damage that you can get off of 20% more damage on top of DOT is insane. But then there's Health Chain. Now, despite the name, you don't actually have to worry too much. In fact, I'm actually just going to get rid of the Pain Chain because we don't need that right now. Despite the name, Health Chain doesn't necessarily buff Grundy's health or heal him. What it does instead first off, this is his most damaging option out of this, even with the damage buff from Power Chain in consideration. That did 31% without damage buffs. I'm gonna wait a little bit, and then throw. So, just off of a normal health chain, Grundy is taking about 10% less damage. And then if he lets it happen again, which, by the way, if you press up circle off of the second one, now Grundy's taking 20% less damage. So, down, down, up, up. Do it during the first slam, and then you'll have this. So yeah, combine it with Power Final Hit, or with the damage buff. 33%. That's as much damage as most supers do, and he got it meterlessly. And that's not all. Yeah, I'm gonna make this guy jump and then do something. Get armor. Which also cuts the damage Grundy takes in half. Adds a little bit of damage off of the initial throw as well, so you can get some really crazy damage situations. Look at that. Again, 33%, and we haven't even taken into consideration the gas yet. There we go. Remember, we gotta take the gas into consideration too, so I'm gonna buff up with gas. Power Train! Power Elite! Now you can see why Grundy's scary. Lots of damage, big command grab situations, get the Oki. Or, I messed it up. Look at this damage that Grundy is getting for like almost no effort. But the trick is that you have to let Grundy get close to you, which is not a smart prospect anyway. If you want to beat him, zone him. Because otherwise you're eating 50% meterlessly with Dio, for technically 2 bar, but let's say even without that. Let's say we just do it meterlessly. And no power chain. Look at this. 36%, and I didn't even need a damage buff. With the damage buff, I think that could be close to like 40%. Which is an obscene amount of damage to get meterlessly. Then there's defense chain, which is kind of tricky, because you gotta do down-up options. This reduces the amount of chip damage that Grundy takes. So I'm actually gonna set Grundy to jump. Oh, I gotta take control of Doomsday for this to work. Just for demonstration's sake, and then have him block. So first, blocking. Oops. Wait, oh wait, does it? That's right, it doesn't change. Oh, he's got, oh. So note, it was 007, 0.1, and then 0.3 for the chip damage. Now with this, he's taking half of the chip damage, which can be pretty good, because, you know, half chip damage is never a bad thing, especially since chip kills in this game. But then there's defense final, which, once the opponent is lifted, go for the second command. Now Grundy takes even less chip damage, evidently. But how much less? Well, let me see if I can get this set up real quick. It's worth noting, of course, that you could jump away from this throw and get a free punish. But once he gets his buffs going, oh wow, he's actually taking 0 chip damage for many weaker attacks. And 90% less chip for bigger attacks. So, if he dashes in again. Come on, you can dash. Thank you. Look at that. Almost no chip damage if he gets this off. So if he needs to play defensive, Grundy can do that. And if Grundy wants to go on the offensive and is ready to switch things up, he can go with Power Chain to bring the damage back, and then maintain the offensive with Health Chain to do the damage, and now he's just taking less damage overall. I don't believe this applies to chip damage though, but regardless, Grundy's big thing is ridiculous damage off of things like Power Chain. So, if Grundy gets a Power Chain off, and let's say now he, I always do that because I used to have Circle be heavy. Look at that, 69% damage for 1 bar. That is a lot of damage, and I haven't even taken into consideration things like, oh, I don't know, let's say the Swamp Hands, or maybe Corner Pressure. There are, if you look online, true touch of deaths that Solomon Grundy can have. Make a couple of mistakes on this character. Look at that, 78% damage, and I didn't even maximize it. I just did that with Power Chain. Supposing, let's say, this takes out the final health bar, and the opponent doesn't want to clash for whatever reason, he doesn't know what's going to happen, and then all of a sudden, I didn't fucking input again. Missed the input, and still got 53%. Grundy sneezes ridiculous amounts of damage if he really wants to. Every time. Dang it. So, fast forward a little bit.
Don't stop.
Okay. Dash in, dash in, dash in. Okay, now we're ready. No, we're not. Let's try this again.
Solomon Grundy. Born on a Monday. Christened on Tuesday. Married on Wednesday.
Seriously? How can I forget this combo? Wait. 78% damage still. So, the amount of damage that Grundy can get from background bounces and this chain grab thing with DOT, it's almost ridiculous. Actually, it is ridiculous. And that is the thing that makes Grundy broken. Or, that's the thing that Grundy is exceptionally strong at. It's high yield, high damaging combos, with some bar maybe, but he has all of the recipes for a TOD and he can actually get them. However, his big struggle is that he's slow and he has trouble with zoners, which is a problem in this game because a competent zoner in Injustice is automatically a shout for high mid, no problem. So both of these characters having troubles with zoning. I mean, Doomsday doesn't even have his own projectile, for crying out loud. They have ways around it, sure, but you gotta work a little harder for it. But you gotta dictate if it's worth it for those sweet, sweet damage situations if you can get everything lined up. And even if you don't get everything lined up, suppose that you have just power chain lined up, and maybe you don't want to waste meter on DOT because your opponent is too smart for that. They're not letting you set up your DOT. Okay, no problem. Just get your damage this way. You're still doing 64% damage without the DOT, which is insane. And I haven't even talked about his super move yet, which is unique for NetherRealm in that I'm pretty sure no other super move is anything like this. It's a buff. Gravedigger gives Grundy unlimited armor as long as he has meter, and it really augments his movement. Look at how much distance he's covering with his jumps. You can't combo into this super, but it is unblockable. Well, you can't combo into it traditionally anyway. There is a way to combo into it. You just need to launch him first. Then meet them in the air. Because that's absolutely something you can do with this super, because holy crap, Grundy needs a stronger grab. On top of the 6 other grabs that he already has. But, let's say you want a real combo. I can do that for you. Let's even do power chain. Fast forward time!
Solomon Grundy. Born on a Monday. Christened on Tuesday. Married on Wednesday.
Remember, the buff goes through cinematics, unlike most other buffs in NetherRealm games. So if you're willing to spend the bar just for a flashy finish, you'll be looking at about 54% damage. Not the greatest, but it's something. This has been interesting because I had to actually technically record this in 2 parts because I really wanted to show off something, but the damage you can get with Grundy, kind of obscene. And Doomsday's armor through shenanigans and fastest overhead low mix-up I've ever seen in a fighting game, that makes these two particularly scary in certain situations. Never underestimate the big guys, especially in fighting games, because they'll just clobber you. Now let's talk interactables on Striker's Island, or in the Striker's Prison. You've seen this one already. It's Gorilla Grodd, who acts as a background punch, who acts as a background bounce. These dumbbells, you could set explosives on or bounce off of if you're an acrobat or gadget character, or just wallop them. It does a lot of damage, but you only get to use it once if you're a power character. There's 3 of these barrels that you can treat as unblockable projectiles. your super on. No, you can't dash with it on, but you can move. And then this thing can be certain characters can slam opponents into this, or power through, or should I say launch off of and cause explosions. Power characters just launch. You see the stage transition, but now it's Grundy's turn. Oh, look, it's Parasite. Gadget and Acrobat characters will punch a hole in this to freeze opponents. No need for that if you're a power character, just smash. Metallo over here can have opponents slammed into, or have explosives planted on, or used as a weapon. Poor Metallo. Oh look, it's Injustice 2 alumni Deadshot. Hiding and ready to zone. If you are a Gadget or Acrobat character, you can grab this guard's gun and shoot it, or just throw the guard. So too with the turret as well. For some reason the sound didn't trigger there. Oh well. Stage transition. That's basically this stage and these big old brutes. Let me know what you guys want to see next. Don't forget to be awesome and see you guys on the other side.